now that I'm getting into the Bible and I'm going on this journey, my perspective on mental health is changing too. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but my perspective's
No,
changed.
of course. Because look, I think when you again, when perspective is important, because a lot of issues have a finite set of answers, but they're viewed with an infinite amount of perspectives. That's the thing. That's what Plato was talking about when he said knowledge and opinion. Oh yeah, there's a lot of opinions out there, but what's about that knowledge? How much of that knowledge is out there? The knowledge typically is pretty specific and concrete, but the perspectives are typically very concrete and very complex and distracting. So you have to try to divvy out what perspective is best. But when you have a spiritual perspective to depression and despair, it becomes about more than just these chemicals in my brain are misfiring and I feel effect in my feelings because of it. No, it becomes about much more than that. It becomes about how can I interrogate my insides, look at myself, deal with myself, get down and dirty with every single uncomfortable truth about myself, fall down and hit my head a few times on the pavement, get bruised and scraped up, then rise and say that I am more than what I'm experiencing right now. Because there is something that is greater than me. There's something that is greater than me that is within me even. I think this is part of the Christian message. Greater is he who is in the world. Greater is he who is something than who is in the world. I'm messing up my Bible verses. I'd be a terrible person.
Canceled.
Oh, greater is he who was within me than who is in the world. I think that's what it says. And that simply
I
means that
like
if you
that.
have that Christ image, if you have that Christ likeness, not Christ exactness, we are not gods, we are not deities. There are some, and I'm not trying to insult anyone, but there are some very weird spiritual beliefs out there. Well, you have a God inside yourself, and if you awaken the God consciousness, you'll be able to think positively and change the world with your positive thought. Yeah, it's a bunch of hokey. That's nonsense. If that's possible, I should be able to think away all the ills in the world that exist, poverty. But you can't do that. It's a laziness. You can't do that. You can't do that. But you have to have a Christ likeness. See, Christ didn't just think his way out of situations in the world. Christ acted his way into the world, into worldly situations, and injected his divine wisdom into them. Let me give you a few examples, okay? The Samaritan woman. Now, in this story, we deal with a few things. We deal with legitimate bigotry. I think they didn't have race back then in those times, but the bigotry back then that Christ experienced would be analogous to racism. So let me tell you the story. Christ walks up to the Samaritan woman because he was with his disciples walking across the land, and he wanted some water. He walks up to the woman, and he says, "May I have some water, ma'am?" The Samaritan woman said, "You're a Jew." I'm paraphrasing, but you're a Jew. How I can't give you any water. And Christ looks at her, and most people, watch me here, most people, after hearing that kind of stuff, would today be cursing her out, posting her name on Twitter, go on Instagram and saying stuff. They'd be livid. How dare you? F you. What in the Christ didn't do any of that. He looked at her and said, "You know, I have access to water that when you drink it, you'll never thirst again." Now, for a human being to hear that, a human being who only knows thirst, they only know satisfaction and thirst. Human beings we're complex entities, but really our survival mechanisms are pretty simple. A lot of us only know desire or thirst and fulfillment, and not much in between. So when a human being who is bound by that sort of carnal limitedness hears that, they're like, "What are you talking about? I always thirst. I'm a human being." He says, No. I got something greater than what you can give me that is accessible to you simply by going beyond your position. Because the position of the Samaritan woman was the conviction that Jews were bad and Jews were evil, that bigotry, that other people from different nations were bad and they were evil. And so she asked herself, okay, I want this water. Give me this water. Well, she got the water conceptually. Then she went off and told the rest of the town, many of them who also disliked Jews, to come over and get the water of eternal life as well. And when they got the water of eternal life, they became followers of Christ because they realized my perceptions, my convictions were built on false faulty and weak ground, but there's something bigger than me. There's something bigger than my perceptions. And I'm going to use the ability to grow, learn, and understand that is endemic to my humanity to go beyond where I am right now and become better. That is what Christ is all about. He's not about condemnation. He's not about hating people. He's about healing, understanding, and going beyond where you are, which is why I never understand when people are like, well, mock Jesus Christ. Well, Jesus Christ is this. He's that. Look, Jesus Christ is many things, but one thing that he is not and never has been in his Bible is someone who walks with the spirit of vengeance in his heart, is someone who treats other people bad even though they treated him bad. He could have called down legions of angels to eradicate the Romans who were persecuting him. But know what he did? When he was on the cross, hung there, nails in his hands, his calluses all over his body, blood streaming down his face. Know what he did? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. That's not a human response. That's a spiritual response. But that is the correct response. And that's a response which has allowed a lot of people, a lot of movements in this world to transcend legitimate injustice, allowed Gandhi to transcend the terrors of colonialism in his country, allowed MLK to transcend the terrors of racism in America, allowed so many people to go ahead and organize against legitimate tyrannies in this world. That is what Christ represents, not this caricature that is painted and emblazoned in the minds of people across American society today. All right.
I love that. That was beautiful. If you had a church, I'd want to be your hype man. I want to have those air horns, like,
Yes,
like
yes,
fire.
yes.
It was beautiful.
Yes. That's just one example. There are plenty more, but I'll stop right there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start preaching.
I mean, that is well, you should. You're good at it. But I think that is a great example of like how, you know, when I get frustrated and I see a lot of people that are so combative and stuck in an echo chamber because they have these preconceived ideas about who they're talking about just because they're a conservative or a Christian or whatever. It's like, how about like what? No. And I think about that story and I think about the, you know, I don't know. It is what it is. It is what it is. It just makes sense. It makes sense.
I feel real. I'm burning up right now.
Yeah, you burn up because you on a roll. It was good.
Wow.